So good evening to all and thank you for being here. So thanks for the introduction, which is what is out here. And just out of interest, today happens to be the 450th lecture, which of course I'm doing as a webinar. So it's a landmark one for us and I'm happy to have all of you with me for this today. So I won't go through more of this because it's already been shared with you. What I'd just like to tell you is that our foundation is a not-for-profit trust. This is what I had set up nearly 13 years back. And what we do is this. We want to make a certain change in the health sciences education and research. What is that? Skill building in online searching and referencing. Impact that we hope to make, overall strengthened research, and based on that, the population gets healthier. And we do it with our online courses, workshops, lectures like this, webinars, mentoring. So that's a small gist of what QMed is all about. Let's go to the topic for the day. Just give me a second. Yeah. Which is literature search and reference styles. The bigger part of the talk will be on literature search. I'll give a very brief thing about reference styles and use of a reference manager. So searching and referencing are really two sides of a coin. Searching is finding all the literature that has been published. Referencing is when you have found this literature, if you want to quote it anywhere, then you've got to keep track of what exactly you want to mention about the source. Let's say you're putting in a sentence somewhere and you want to say, I read this in such and such a source. What all do you have to quote about the source? So that is referencing. When do we need to do this? UG projects like the ICMR or other similar things, the PG thesis, right from the protocol to the project report thesis, at every point you need to do a literature search. And at the writing stage, you have to do the referencing. When you're writing articles, book chapters, then too it is important. But I love to stress that we don't forget that in practice as well, in order to stay updated and to offer evidence-based care for patients, you have to know how to do a good literature search. Many people say, oh, this is all very useful in research, but it doesn't stop with research. This is one part of research which is useful throughout your career. Why do we need to do these activities in research? We've got to know what has already been done. We don't unnecessarily duplicate. And when we are referencing anything, we are doing this so that we are giving credit to previous researchers. And of course, we are not accused of plagiarism when we actually tell people that we have taken this from somewhere. Of course, there's lots more about plagiarism, but this is the very brief bit about it. Why do we need to do these activities in practice? To stay updated, as I said, to learn how to find the best available current evidence. You've all been told, or you will be told, that your treatment should always be evidence-based. What has worked in the largest population in the world? So you need to know how to find that and base your treatment on that. Whether you follow what is recommended or not, that depends on your specific patient, and you learn how to handle all this when you're learning more about EBM. Now, why also includes, this is for referencing. You've got to store details of any article, report, website, etc. for future use. Why do you have to do this? When you're writing your research paper, you've got to quote. In conferences also, if you're presenting a slide and you're saying something you read up somewhere, you need to quote that. You've got to also provide evidence in case of legal suits. It's very sad that these are increasing, but one definite good part is that if you're storing whatever you've read up and you know where to find that, then you can always say you've treated based on the best evidence, and that always definitely has a much better chance of saving you. So as I said, searching and referencing are two sides of a coin. I'm elaborating now. Searching is finding literature for a publication or in practice for various reasons. Referencing is you're referencing your literature when writing a publication, defending your viva, defending in court. So these two activities, learn them, start learning it today. I'll tell you how you can learn more and continuously learn more. These are two skills which are getting increasingly important, and I love stressing this to undergraduate audiences because you are at a stage where you learn much faster than anybody else. The sooner you learn these and make it part of you, the better it is for you. So this webinar, my literature search will focus more on PubMed because PubMed is a free to search database and you're going to use it a lot. So I will base all my teaching on PubMed, and for referencing styles, I'm going to touch upon the basics of styles and their importance and the importance of using a reference manager. I won't go into detail about a reference manager, but why you should use one and how extremely helpful it can be to save hours for you later on. So first, let's start with the literature part. Now, when we need literature or any kind of updates, we have different levels of need on any topic, general to specific. So I'm just putting 3 questions. It's pretty obvious that the first is very, very generic. The second is more specific. And the third is super specific. Most of our questions fall in either these 3 levels or something in between, slight gray areas. So based on this, we've got to understand what resources are available. The resources may be in print or online, and how do you match them to different kinds of your needs. So the first type, which is a very basic need, is matched by basic resources like I've put here, dictionaries, encyclopedias, etc. As again, I stress, doesn't matter if they are in print or online. Whatever you have readily available with you is what you use. And this is for learning your basic studying, quickly checking some reference, etc. These are all sources that are available. We are not going to talk more about these because you've already been introduced to these kinds of resources. We'll move on to what all we will be covering. The second type, where you have a kind of specific need on a topic, on a drug, etc. Your lifelong habit will be catching up with journals and reading more, because journals are reporting current research as well as past research. Still more specific are these kinds of resources within this blob here. They are all what are called grey literature. They have not yet been published in journals, from journals further in books. These are what are called, as I said, grey literature or unpublished literature. And these help you track research on any topic. Okay? So just be aware of these. You may not use much of these in your undergrad days, but you must know that they are there and be aware that later on you've got to learn about these. The last one is what one would use during practice mainly. So when there was a question like which drugs works better for a specific condition, you get evidence from publications called systematic reviews. Okay? So systematic review tells you whether drug A works or drug B works or both are equally effective, or there's no clear answer yet. This is also called secondary research. It is research done on research papers and not research done on people. Further, in practice, you have 2 more kinds of resources, guidelines and summaries. These are based on evidence that comes from systematic reviews. So guidelines are very specific publications which tell you if you're faced with a patient with XYZ, step 1, you do this, step 2, you do this, step 3, you do this, and those steps are based on evidence from systematic reviews. Summaries are more of revision or learning tools. They are very topic-based, diseases, drugs, and they are exactly what they are. They are summaries so that you're not reading a textbook to learn from the beginning, but you're reading the most important bits about a disease or a drug. Again, summaries are also based on evidence from systematic reviews. Systematic reviews are very detailed publications. If you're interested in the full research about it, that's where you go. Otherwise, during practice, your most often used resources are guidelines and summaries. This is one slide that you must be very familiar with. And it's important to remember that a single website may have just one kind of resource. Like your Harrison's textbook online is one single textbook. NEJM is one single journal. Then you have websites which have many textbooks, many journals, maybe both together. And then there are websites which have textbooks, journals, and summaries and guidelines. So a website may have all kinds of combinations or a single resource or two resources. You will have to identify then that based on your query, is that website going to help you? And if yes, which section of the website you go to? Right. I'm going to touch a little more about the evidence pyramid of research papers. Now, journals have research and non-research articles. Non-research articles are book reviews, movie reviews, stuff like that. So only the research papers, if you take, they're broadly divided into three categories. At the bottom, you have research papers of this kind, which are very, very basic science. So ideas, editorials, animal research, etc. So these are more for advanced learning on a topic, but not for treating patients in any way. It's just for your strengthening your learning beyond your textbooks. The middle group are all research done on patients. Case reports are the simplest, case series a little more. I'm sure you either already learned or you will be learning all this in your community medicine and other areas. I'd like to touch upon the highest two. Cohort studies are observational studies done on large groups. Randomized controlled double-blind studies are intervention studies done on reasonably large groups. It could be from 30 above to, there are very, very large randomized double-blind studies done. Sometimes the same study is done parallelly in different centers. So they are called multi-centric studies. Now these cover large numbers, and so the evidence that comes out of it is considered higher. The highest comes from systematic reviews and meta-analysis, which are studies done on RCTs and occasionally cohort studies. So a journal article, the higher the evidence is from the higher levels of publications. So this is again something you should be ready for. So a case report which is done on one single patient is not a source of evidence. It's just a source of information. The higher you go, the evidence is stronger and stronger. So with that brief information about information resources available today, let's move on to searching these resources. First, I'll introduce you to two fundamentals of searching, wherever you search. The first fundamental is the computer's brain, which is of course programmed by a human or more humans, and the human brain work differently. What is the difference? When we search, we think or we hope that all the results we get from a search will be about whatever terms we searched. But the computer thinks when I fetch results, every result should just contain the terms, whether it's about that term or not. And let's see an example for this. Suppose I search PubMed for asthma in COPD patients. A lot of my results will be relevant like this, but we really expect all should be relevant like this. Well, however, the computer will give us one or more results like this, where it talks about small airway diseases excluding asthma and COPD. So the computer doesn't understand that excluding means these don't exist. It sees the words here and gives it to you. And we have no clue what percentage of our results will be like this, what percentage will be like this. That really depends on the time all these articles are being added in the database and the real numbers. Second fundamental is we can do a special search telling the computer that the results should of course contain our search terms, but in specific parts or areas of the result. And what are the areas of a result? Let's take a journal article. I've marked all the areas. This is the title. This line has the authors. This is the name of the journal, etc., etc. So we can really do a specific search that we want our word or phrase or number to be in which of these areas. How do we do this? We specify by tagging our search terms. Everybody is familiar with hashtags. It's a very similar principle. In PubMed, if I type the word asthma, tag it with TI by putting the word T, the characters TI in square brackets, I'm asking for the word asthma to come in the title of every result, the article title. If I type white, tag it with AU, I'm specifying the word white should be in the author area. So I want white to be the author of my article. So you see one of the results here. There's asthma in the title, white in the author area. So these kinds of tagging and specifying narrows down our search results. So these are two fundamentals. I'm just giving a recap of these. The computer gives us results containing our search terms, and we can specify where by tagging. With the two fundamentals, we move on to the 4 principles of searching. First, know your resource. We are going to be doing this with PubMed, and we need to know every resource very well. So what exactly is PubMed? PubMed is an index to articles published in around 5,000 plus journals. What do we mean by index? This database does not contain the full text. Everybody is familiar that the end of any large textbook, you have an index. That part is separate. The rest of the book is separate. Like that, PubMed is an index. It doesn't contain those journal articles, which are all in the journal website. What it contains for every article is only what are called bibliographic details plus abstract where available. So this is a sample PubMed record. It represents a journal article whose title is in blue. The authors are marked here. This is the name of the journal. So it represents this article in this journal published in the year 2017, and volume, you get more information about it in most cases. So here it also says the article is free. It's marked free here, but the full text is in the journal website or in an archive called PubMed Central. I'll just take a few seconds to describe the two. Journal website, everybody knows. NEJM has a journal website, Indian Journal of Medical Research has a journal website, and it has all the articles published in those journals. PubMed Central is an archive where many journals choose to put a copy of their articles there. Some do it selectively, some do all articles. So it's really a copy there. And the reason for such an archive is in case a journal decides to close down or something, they might remove their website. People who have the print issues, great. But the archive PubMed Central will contain all those copies of the articles. Sometimes some journals have the articles paid on their website, but free in PubMed Central. So there are differences like this. Okay. So with that, we've understood what PubMed is. It is only an index. It is not a database of articles. And with that, we'll apply 4 principles, which are, or we'll understand 4 principles which are based on the 2 fundamentals. The first principle is based on the first fundamental, which is computer gives us results containing our search terms. So if we search words like asthma, bronchitis, liver cirrhosis, etc., the results contain our term. Anywhere is what a word principle is, word search principle is. In PubMed, anywhere means the results contain our term in the bibliographic details or abstract. The PubMed search engine does not go to the journal website where the article is and search that. That is what Google Scholar does. PubMed search engine searches what it has, which is only the bibliographic details and abstract if available. An abstract is available if an author has written an abstract. Second principle is about tagging. Third is also about tagging. So let's learn these two. Second principle is about a descriptive tag search by which the results contain a term in a description area. What is a description area in PubMed? This is again a sample bibliographic record. If you click the title, if there is an abstract, you will see an abstract. This one has an abstract you're partially seeing. If you click the title, you'll see the full abstract. Now, once you click this, you're here. As I said, you can see the abstract. When you view the screen on the right side, I'm taking your attention to something called mesh terms. Mesh terms is the description area. This really is located below the abstract. So if you click mesh terms, you will be taken to that area. But just for demonstration, I'm going to show it as if it is just below the title. It's actually well below the abstract. So now you can see here, mesh terms, there's a set of terms here. These terms are added to most records in PubMed to describe the article. That means this article is about adolescents, adults, diagnosis of asthma, epidemiology of asthma, methods of bronchial provocation tests, whole lot of things like this. So in case there was no abstract, reading this list of terms will give you a fairly good idea of what this article is about. Now, this being the description area, we can ask that our search terms must come in this area. How do we do that? The search method is we type the word asthma, and in square brackets where we earlier typed TI or AU, we type the word mesh because that's the name of that area. So we type asthma, tag it with mesh, and by which we are telling the PubMed search engine, please find the term asthma in that list of mesh terms. So it will look for the mesh in every one of its 30 million plus articles, that is records. It will look under this mesh term area for the word asthma with or without those subheadings that you can see, diagnosis, epidemiology, etc. So this is how it will get you all records about asthma. Sometimes the word asthma may not be in the title, may not be in the abstract, but because it is here and it gets you the result, you can be sure that every result that you have is about asthma. This is the way you get articles about whatever you're searching. These descriptive terms in PubMed are added by specialist indexers, human indexers from the National Library of Medicine, or NLM for short, who create this entire PubMed database. And as I said earlier, these terms, set of terms, describe the entire article. The indexers have access to the full text. They can read the full text and they add this in order to help us understand what an article is about, in order to help us use those terms, tag it with mesh and search. Third principle is factual tag or other generic tag search, by which results contain a term in specific areas. So we can search for a phrase like pharmacological therapy in the title if we tag it with title. Earlier we saw asthma TI, so we can type pharmacological therapy, tag it with TI. White as the author, published in the year 2006, etc. So we learn how to use different tags. If I use the word drugs, tag it with TI, we've already learned PubMed will look for it in the title of all the 30 million plus. If I tag drugs with TIAB, it will look in the title as well as in the abstract, both areas. So in some cases, it will be in the title, some cases it will be in the abstract, some cases it will be in both areas together. JOUR, it will look in the area where the journal title appears. So every result will be articles published in the journal drugs. White AU also we learned, author area. I'm just quickly putting some more. If you type drugs, tag it with AD, it will look in the author's address area, author's affiliation. Mesh we learned earlier, but I'm just putting it here. If I type the word drugs and add no tag at all, it's going to look in all these areas. And just a reminder, it doesn't look in the full text because the PubMed search engine searches only the database and not the whole World Wide Web for the full text of the articles. Numbers, if you tag page, it means you're searching for an article published in page 143. PDAT, which stands for publication date, or DP, which stands for date of publication. Either of these tags could be used to search for the year of publication. So don't worry about remembering all these. We are going to do examples, and of course, you will have the recording later. When do we use these tags? We want to search for an articles by an author in a journal, from an institution, etc. So let's see some examples. Here I typed slim, tagged it with AU. I get results by slim R, slim K, slim M, etc. So if you want to use an initial, you put in the name, give a space, and then add the initial, not the initial ahead. Retina, JOUR, you can see the results are from the journal Retina. Nanavati Hospital, AD. I want to know how many articles have been published from Nanavati Hospital. So we've got some 151 results. You can't see the publication address here. You've got to click a title, and in this area, that is actually, there'll be affiliations with a plus. If you click, this is just below the authors. If you click the plus, you'll see here, authors are from Nanavati Hospital. This way. The last principle is results contain our terms in combinations we specify. Till now, I've been telling you of a single term, which could be a word or a phrase or numbers. Now, we know that anytime we do a search, we are not just searching by an author or something. We are searching by an author and his or her publications in a year. Or we are searching combinations of topics. So how do we do these combinations? Okay. So till now, if we've been searching a topic like this is the wrong method because A, we have not done any tagging, and we are combining our terms with prepositions and conjunctions. I've underlined them. PubMed simply is programmed to completely ignore those prepositions and conjunctions. So how do we really do our search? We have to combine our search terms with and, or, not, any one or more of these, all in capitals. And these three words are technically called Boolean operators. We're going to learn how to use Boolean operators correctly. So I've taken two terms, asthma, bronchitis. I'm doing separate searches first. I searched the word asthma without any tag, and we know that the results in PubMed contain the word asthma. Let's, just for the sake of this exercise, imagine we got only 100 results. Separately, I searched the word bronchitis, and let's say I got 70 results. Now, these can represent either a tagged search or an untagged search. I could have searched TI, I could have searched mesh, anything. But I've just put only the word, only for explaining how Boolean operators work. Okay? So I've put the results here, 170. If I type asthma and bronchitis together in PubMed, what happens? They're not asking for all articles about asthma as well as bronchitis. Our query really means I want to find how many records in the 30 million plus in PubMed contain asthma and bronchitis together. You've got to remember the contain all the time. So how many contain both together? So the result will obviously be less than 70. Technically, it could be maximum 70, but it's really unlikely that everybody who writes about bronchitis will also write about asthma. So let's assume we got about 45 results, which is less than the lower number 70. If I search asthma or bronchitis, PubMed interprets my query as how many records contain at least one term. That is, some results will contain asthma, some results will contain bronchitis, some will contain both. And how does this happen? It happens by PubMed combining the 100 plus 70, but it recognizes that in both sets 45 are common, so it removes the 45 and it will give you 125. The last combination is asthma, not bronchitis. What happens here? Out of the query is translated as how many records contain asthma but not bronchitis, which means out of this 100, 45 contain bronchitis as well. So 100 minus 45 will be 55. This is again one slide I would tell you to keep understanding by looking at it again and again so that you understand these three, how they work perfectly. And one point is the not is usually not really used for topics like asthma, not bronchitis. I'll tell you why. If I do this, when I remove the 45 which contain bronchitis, I'm also losing 45 where there is information about asthma. So usually this not is not used for topics but for sets, which I'll explain now, but I will not be teaching it in detail. In PubMed, we know that not every item contains an abstract. So if I search for asthma and those that have abstracts, let's say out of 180 contain abstracts, then I want to still scan those that don't have abstracts. So I will do asthma not has abstract. So that will give me the rest 20. How to do this, you'll have to learn it separately. But that is when it's for removing groups or sets, that's where you use not and not in topics. But this is just for understanding how not works. So I'll again stress asthma, not bronchitis will be 100 containing asthma, out of which 45 containing bronchitis go, but you're losing information about asthma in these. Okay. And one more stress is, I have just done it with plain words. If I do asthma TI and bronchitis TI, that means how many contain both words in the title. If I do asthma mesh and bronchitis mesh, I'm asking how many contain both the words in the list of mesh terms, which means the results are guaranteed to contain asthma as well as bronchitis related coverage. Fine. So if we summarize principle 4, when you combine two or more search terms, please use Boolean operators and not and, in, by, etc. And means every result contains less terms than the original, so less results, contains every term. Or means contain at least one, so you get more results than the original of each. Not contains the first and not the subsequent. You can combine as many terms with as many combinations of Boolean operators. We will learn some simple exercises in this lecture. Okay. Before that, we'll just recap the 4 principles. Search methods. If you just do a plain word search, results contain a term anywhere in the bibliographic record. Mesh search in the list of mesh terms, the best way of searching. Field search in the fields we specify, A, U, T, I, J, O, U, R, etc. Searching with Boolean operators with or without tags. It's in the combinations we specify, which we just learned. So let's do some simple exercises applying all the principles. Now, when you type your search terms in PubMed, now remember, no longer prevalence of asthma and bronchitis in India. You're going to put your word or number, add the tag, type in the Boolean operator, next word or number, type the tag, and so on, as many terms as you want. Example, diabetes, TI, or hypertension, TI. You want either of these words coming in the title. Stem cell transplantation mesh means articles about this, and 2016 DP means articles published about this topic in this year 2016. So you're not going to say in 2016, but and 2016 DP. So with this, how we type search terms, let's do exercises. I remember an article about asthma appearing on page 143 of some journal. Asthma, about asthma, you'll have to tag asthma with mesh. When it appears in the list of the mesh terms, it is guaranteed that the whole article is about asthma, whether asthma is the title or abstract or not. 143 page, you type 143, tag it with page. How do you input your search term in the search box? Asthma, mesh, and 143 page. Both these conditions are compulsory for my results. So whatever number of results you get, you'll find asthma in the list of mesh terms and 143 in the page number area. My HOD told me to read up articles by N.D. Brown in the journal Pediatrics. So remember, initials follow the name. So Brown space ND, tag it with author, and Pediatrics JOUR. Now you might notice that I'm typing Brown in mixed case, ND in capital, AU in small, Pediatrics miss, this is all capital. All those don't matter and must be in capital. Okay. Right. Now we'll go to a topic search. And the purpose of my research on this topic is I don't want to do a thorough search. I want to quickly read up some articles on use of antioxidants in cataract as well as in glaucoma. So this needs some deliberation and planning. The previous ones were more factual. First, we must always visualize our results. How do we do this? Every result item has to contain antioxidants and either cataract alone or glaucoma alone or both together. This is compulsory here, either single or both together. So what happens? Again, visualizing the result. Some of our results will be having antioxidants and cataract, some antioxidants and glaucoma, some all three terms. All these come together in your final result. So what are the steps we do for searching? We know that these are the three terms we are going to use in our search. First, we add Boolean operators. This entire exercise must be done on pen and paper or in Word or any word processor. So add the Boolean operators, antioxidants, and cataract or glaucoma because we want either of them. But we have to also put them in the correct order because in the above order, what happens is if we type it exactly like that, PubMed will first pull out all items that have antioxidants and cataract together. Then when it sees or glaucoma, it will pull out all the glaucoma items and mix everything together and give it to you. So you'll have a whole lot of glaucoma related records which are nothing to do with antioxidants or cataract. So how do we put the correct order? Take the conditions together, the or operator part together first, cataract or glaucoma and antioxidants. Now what does it do? First, it pulls out every paper that has either cataract or glaucoma. And then when it sees and antioxidants, it understands that antioxidants should be inside the set. Rest of PubMed, wherever it is, it doesn't want it. It has to be inside the set. So if you got 200 papers that had either cataract or glaucoma, it will look for inside those 200 how many have antioxidants and it might get you 53 or something like that. Finally, you've got to tag each term. So my purpose of the search was I wanted to quickly read some. And if I want to quickly read some, my decision based on what to read is obviously if those words appear in the title. So I would do my search as cataract TI or glaucoma TI and antioxidants TI. So either of these words will come in the title. Antioxidants definitely comes in the title. So if I get some 25, 30, I'll choose about 5 of them and read them. Now suppose I got only 2 or 3. Then what I can try is TIAB because then if I get say some 10 of them, I can at least see if the words come in the abstract and then choose out of that and read. But if I decide to do research on this topic, then the search has to be cataract mesh or glaucoma mesh and antioxidants mesh. Because when these terms come in the list of the mesh terms, the article is definitely about it And why it is vital is sometimes these words, one or more, may not appear in the title, may not appear in the abstract, and you will lose it if you search TI or TIAP. So again, a quick revision. The fundamentals that we learned are results contain our terms. We have to tag our terms to say where that contain should happen. The 4 principles, word search is based on the first fundamental. Descriptive tag and factual tag are based on the second fundamental. The combination is how do you combine all your search terms. Boolean operators in capitals and or not. Tags must be in square brackets. All this is applicable for PubMed. Different databases might apply all these things differently. Now that we know the 4 principles, let's move on a little more to learn a little more about MESH. What is MESH? MESH stands for Medical Subject Headings. That's the full form. It's a collection of standard terms. So it's really a thesaurus. And it's terms from this collection that those indexers take and tag in the, below each item. So for searching with MESH, we have to really find the right MESH terms. We can't take any medical term, type it and tag it with MESH because it may not be in the MESH thesaurus. Where is the MESH thesaurus? On the PubMed homepage, if you scroll down, there's a bunch of links. On the extreme right, you find MESH database. You click this and you're in the MESH database. You've left PubMed, you're in the MESH database. Let's try pregnancy-induced diabetes. If I want to search for articles about this, can I tag this phrase with MESH? I click search. I'm searching the MESH database now, thesaurus. I'm told that the standardized term is diabetes gestational, which is really gestational diabetes. Some terms are inverted for certain reasons. Let's not get into that. Below the term, you find the small paragraph, and that is called the scope note. The indexers will go through this to figure out for what kind of articles they will use diabetes gestational. Diabetes induced by pregnancy but resolved at the end. This term does not cover articles about previously diagnosed diabetics who become pregnant. For such articles, an indexer will use pregnancy in diabetics. So can you see how specific some MESH terms can be? So since indexers use this thesaurus to do their indexing, we should also use this to find the best MESH term to do our searches. Another example is spectacles, for which the MESH term is eyeglasses. The scope note tells us that the purpose is to aid or improve vision, and it does not include goggles or non-prescriptive sunglasses, for which the MESH term is eye protective devices. Not every MESH term is so hyper-specific. I've just shown you 2 examples. Many are very generic, but as long as we find them here, see the scope note and realize this is what I'm looking for, we could use these. Now let's do a topic search starting from the MESH database. We don't have to come back to PubMed, note everything, type it there. So the same topic, let's search it from the MESH database. So we are in the MESH database. I type glaucoma. I could use cataract or glaucoma or cataract. Both will get the same results. So glaucoma, I click search. I select the term glaucoma. On the right side of the screen, you can see a box called PubMed Search Builder. This is where you build your search with 2 or more terms. So just below that, there is a button called Add to Search Builder. We click this and the system will put in glaucoma MESH here. We don't have to do that typing. We've put in the first term. So we erase glaucoma and type cataract, click search, again select this. Now we have to remember we are doing glaucoma or cataract. So we have got to change this Boolean operator from AND to OR. Then click Add to Search Builder and it will put in OR cataract MESH. Third term, antioxidants. We type antioxidants in search and We select antioxidants. This time our Boolean operator is AND, so we don't make any changes. Click Add to Search Builder. It types in AND antioxidants mesh. Having built our search, we click Search PubMed and get our results here, 614 results. So this is how you can do a search right from the mesh database, but it's important to plan it before so you have your order, Boolean operators, everything correctly. Keep looking at your Word document or paper and execute your search. So in the mesh database, you can search for only one term at a time. You find a term, add it to the builder, then look for the next term, find it, add it to the builder, and so on. Subheadings, you remember asthma, we had a slash epidemiology, things like that. How do we find subheadings? We use subheadings for causes of a disease like asthma / etiology, adverse effects of a drug, paracetamol / adverse effects, poisoning by a drug, and so on. So, surgery for hernia, these are examples. How do we find subheadings? I type glaucoma search. Instead of selecting and adding, I click it, and here I can choose etiology diagnosis, and I can say add to search builder. It will type in glaucoma diagnosis mesh or glaucoma etiology mesh, and then we click search PubMed and run the search. That's how you use subheadings. You can add as many subheadings, one or more for any term. So a recap about mesh. We learned how to find a mesh term, add it to the search builder, search PubMed. For two or more terms or subheadings, you've got to plan your order correctly and choose Boolean operators correctly. Finally, we learn one wonderful feature in PubMed, which is based on principles 3 and 4, that is the different tags and Boolean operators. What is this feature? If you have an incomplete or incorrect reference, how do you find the correct one? Of course, as long as that journal article is from PubMed or from a PubMed journal. Let's say context. You went for a conference or some presentation. The speaker put up this figure and shared this source from which he or she has put in this figure. Now, what do we have here? We have the author, we have partial title, and we have the year. This is all we have. We don't have the journal. We don't have volume, issue, page numbers, which are all part of a journal article. So in PubMed, I again take you to the lower section with the links. There's one called Single Citation Matcher. So inside here, when you click there, you reach a page like this. These are the details we have. So we put Kumar V in the author area, forecasting malaria in the title words area, 2014 in the date. And we click search. PubMed executes the search the way we had done topics earlier. 2014 PDAT and Kumar V author and forecasting malaria. Having done the search, it found one single result. This really takes all of about 15 seconds to do. Okay. And we notice on the right side that this says free article in the journal as well as in PubMed Central. You could click either of them and read the article. And suppose you want to quote the same article in your article or thesis, etc. You want to cite this. How do you note it down? You click the cite button and it pops up as a citation where authors come first. If you notice here, the journal details come first, then the title, then the authors. Here, it comes in the way you write your citations. Authors first, then the title, then the journal title. So you just have to click copy and paste it directly in your article or somewhere else where you're noting everything so that you can copy paste it later. All these things can really save you hours. Otherwise, we sit to type all this, make mistakes. It is sent back to us. We have to correct it. All these things can be completely avoided. So final recap for literature searching. 3 types of information resources: basic learning, which are textbooks, manuals, etc. Research, which is journals and grey literature. Synthesis, which is systematic reviews, guidelines, summaries. PubMed, we learned word search, mesh search, which is the most important because it gives you the most relevant results, field search, which you do in context, Boolean operators, and single citation matcher, a very useful feature. With that, we move on to a shorter part, which is about referencing. So you've done your literature search, you found a good number of reading articles, etc. And when you are writing your thesis or a project report or a journal article, you might have to write something that you read there. Some parts could be copied like a definition or a quotation, small things like that. The rest of it, you're describing what you read. In this study, so-and-so proved that this happened. Okay? So what is in the study, you've got to reference it. How do we do this? What are the normal standard methods? In a publication, there are two steps for referencing. One is, as you write, you're going to cite what you've read. End of your article or thesis, you will give the full details of what you cited in the text in the bibliography or list of references. So I'll just give you a sample of how it looks like in an article. So in text citation, you make a small mention to say that you've read something in another publication. So this is an article in the journal PLOS Medicine, and I'm showing you how the authors of this article have done it. If you see the introduction, they've written a couple of sentences and put 1, 2. This is called the in-text citation. 3, 4 here for these sentences. All these, they've based their writing the introduction on 4 different articles they've read. Now these 4, how do you know what they are? If you go to the end of the article, you have in the same order 1, 2, 3, 4 and the full details of the journal articles or books or website that they are quoting. Little more about these. First thing, I use the word references and I use the word or reference list and bibliography. These are 2 often used terms and you're going to hear them. Is there any difference? They are used very interchangeably, but there is a subtle difference. References are what you have referred to with your in-text citations 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Bibliography is a recommended reading material. You may have read it and you may have got ideas from it, but you've not cited it because you've only broadly used something from there. Okay? Now, usually in a journal articles, you don't include a bibliography. You only have whatever you've cited. Whereas in a thesis or in a textbook or something, you could recommend to readers other reading material in a bibliography. Okay. So elements for references, whether it's a reference list or bibliography, what are all the elements that you need to mention? These elements are also called metadata in the electronic world. So for a book, the reference details or metadata are author or editor, title, edition if it is not the first edition, place or city of publication, publisher, and year of publication. This much is a must for books. How does it look like when you reference? So all these are the editors. We put EDS, means editors for the 18th edition of Harrison's. City is New York. McGraw-Hill is the publisher. Year. These punctuations also matter. After the authors, after all authors, you get this, after authors, you get a full stop. After the name of the book, you get this comma and so on. So actually, in the days when we used to handwrite or type, we had to remember all this and do it. Today, reference managers do this automatically, and I will tell you how. For journal articles, these are the elements that you must quote. So this is how it looks like. Website pages, if you have gone through the WHO or ICMR, these are all the elements that have to show up in your reference. So this is what it looks like. Whoever wrote that web page, this is the title of that web page. In brackets, you write internet, that it's an internet resource. Because journals could also be print journals, and journals anyway are not called internet resource. Internet resource is a general website where the page can keep changing at any time. So we've got to also put in the date on which we took the information from there, and finally the URL. Why is the date important? These website pages, the content may change sometime. And one doctor whose works I've often, I can't say works, I've listened to him in lectures and workshops. He gives an addition tip that you save the screenshot for the day. Because if you're adding this website detail in your thesis and during your viva, if they ask you to defend it, saying we don't see it there, you'll have to show the screenshot or on the date on which you took. For example, on that date, it could say 1,000 patients were cured. Later on, it could say 1,050 patients were cured or 5,000 patients were cured. You can say on that date, this was the data that I had. Referencing styles, broadly, there are two types. One is called the numbered style, which is what we saw, where the in-text citation was 1, 2, 3, 4. The other is called the author year style. This is for the in-text citations. So numbered the in-text will look like this, as we saw earlier. After a part of a sentence, it will say 1. After the next sentence, it will say 2. And in the reference list, it will be numerical. The first reference, this one is this, and the second one is this. Now, if this were done in the author year style, then it would be like this. End of the sentence, you're writing the author and year of publication. End of this sentence, you're writing author and year of publication. The list of references will be alphabetically by author. In this case, it's the same. But let's say if this first sentence was Akerkar and Bijle, then even then this order would be the same. Okay? It's very natural because when you're reading, if you see Agarwal, then in the list you would go alphabetically to find it. That's why it is like that. So the two broad styles are used in many different popular styles. The most well-known and often used styles are Vancouver, which is a numbered style, Harvard, which is an author year style. There are lots and lots and lots of styles. The same doctor who said about capturing the web page and storing it also has this question, and which I completely agree to, that if referencing is all about citing and giving a list, why on earth do we need so many styles to complicate lives? We could just have one single style, but maybe we need a change.org to really ask for this. Okay. So, but till it happens, we've got to learn them and be good at it. So journals and styles, different journals may ask for different and sometimes super specific styles. For example, Vancouver itself has 20 different styles. Sometimes a journal asks for the 21st difference of a Vancouver, which is really crazy, but it does. And usually all this is clearly written in their instructions to author page. Every journal has an instructions to author page. You'll have to go there and note it carefully and see that that is how you do your citing and referencing. So a good practice is, this is now outside the referencing part, a general recommendation. Any good article or book that you read, make it a point to note down essentials. That is whatever I said as metadata for book, journal article, website, in a reference manager or reference management software. Okay, I'll be saying that again. So these softwares later allow you to add the citations and bibliography very easily. An interesting fact is, before the internet and computers happened, every researcher had a 5x3-inch card, and they would write down all these details, whatever I had mentioned earlier, and they would store these cards alphabetically so that when they wrote their bibliography, when they wrote their citations, they would carefully use the cards and do it. Now we are saved of all those nightmares. So what are reference managers? There are softwares or apps that you can download and populate them with the metadata of whole lot of items, even reports and a whole lot of other things. Once you populate them, then you can use them again. I'll tell you how. And the most popular reference managers that are free are Mendeley and Zotero. You could download any of them and learn to use them. There is one called EndNote, which is most likely to be more sophisticated with more features, and that one is paid. Increasingly, many medical colleges, universities are getting paid versions for people to use. And this is again something which it will be great if every institution does this. These are things where the bigger body should allow for budgets like this and use these. But till then, at least at UG level, Mendeley and Zotero will work beautifully, no problem. What do we do in these? You can type in metadatas, entries about a book, journal, etc. manually. You can add PDFs directly. You've downloaded a journal article, you can add it and automatically extract the metadata. Or if you've done a PubMed search and got some 2500, etc., you can import those details from PubMed into these reference managers. You've got to learn how to do all this, but once you learn it, life becomes so much easier. And once you've got everything, you can organize your collection into folders. You can export your collections. If you decide, I don't like Mendeley, I want to use Zotero, you can export it like that, continue using Zotero. And while writing an article or thesis, you can insert as many citations, 1, 2, 3, 4, or Agarwal 2011, etc. You can, in one click, insert the bibliography list. It is fine when you have a list of just 5, you can actually type them manually. But if in really high-end research, anything between 30 and hundreds of references, it's no fun to type them. Plus, if your editor or guide tells you shift this paragraph above, you've got to renumber everything, that's no fun. So a reference manager, the earlier you learn to use it in your life, it will save you a lot of time, lot of nightmares later on. How do you learn more? I'll introduce you to our website, QMed's website, which is qmed.ngo. Ask you to go to this link called online courses. That will take you to our other website, which has a longer URL, and that's why I gave you qmed.ngo. It takes you here, and here, if you click courses, you're told that you have 3 courses right now. We are planning to add still more. The first one, which is an elaboration of what we learned today, is completely free. You just have to register and do it. There are videos where I'm talking like this. You can replay any video any number of times and answer MCQs and a final assessment and get a certificate as well. Okay. For accessing these 2, on the homepage of QMed courses, you will find details under support our courses. We ask you to give a donation, and once you give that, we activate access to both these. Plus, in future, if we add any new paid course, you'll get that automatically. Whatever you give lasts for 1 year. It's like a membership by a donation. Okay. You can do these on a mobile too, either via browser or by an app. You download an app called Moodle, and we'll tell you how to add our URL there. You can do it on this. The best part is no video is longer than 12 minutes. Average video is just 5 to 6 minutes. So you can learn little in a day. Just view 2 to 3 videos or more as you like and learn. So currently, as I said, there are these 3 courses, and for these 2, you give a donation and you can access more courses as we add them. And there is an institutional pricing. If institutions can take them, it works out much better, but still this is available. What I'd like to, here are my contacts for those who need it. And of course, right now, our landline, it's unlikely that anybody will answer it because very rarely any of us goes to our office. The other 2, info@qmed.ngo, will work best. I'd like to just share a small bit of information that I'm going to start a fundraising campaign where I'm going to ask donors to sponsor one or more undergraduate student of any health science discipline, medicine, nursing, physiotherapy, anything. And I'm going to very soon invite an expression of interest for those who don't want to pay. You can, of course, straight away register and access the free course. If you don't want to pay right now for any reason to access the full paid course, then fill in that expression of interest, which I will be announcing on Facebook, Twitter, etc. And in the order in which I have names in my Google form, as people give a donation, I will first come, first served, I will be giving access to those who have done. But when I give access, I will ask each of you for a 250 rupee donation, and so that you're not getting it 100% free, but I will add certain conditions of about how much you must score. And if you score that much, you get that amount back in the form of a prize. And I may add more prizes. We are still finalizing all this. So keep watching our Facebook page and Twitter, etc. Mine as well as our organization's this thing. And I will also, since I have all your email IDs, I will write to you as well once we are finalizing that. So with that, I'm done and time for questions.
So if anyone else has any questions, they may ask, ma'am.
Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any number of questions, time permitting.
Okay. If no one is willing to ask, then I have a few questions which I would
Sure.
like. So, ma'am, it becomes actually difficult to find the place from where the research has been done. So, how to search that?
So as I said, if you want to know, first thing is if you find an article and you wonder where it was done, in PubMed, I'm describing everything in PubMed, which is you just below the author details, click the plus sign and you'll know where each author is from. So you can figure out from there.
The other way around. Suppose we are doing an research currently where we are doing a research in Mumbai, and suppose we want to find a similar research which has been done in the past in Mumbai area itself. So to find that kinds of article.
Yeah. So suppose we take the topic of cataract mesh or glaucoma mesh and antioxidants mesh.
Okay.
You add and Mumbai and square bracket AD.
AD.
AD is the address. It was there in that slide.
Oh, okay. AD.
Tags.
I tried using mesh a lot of times and it never came.
Yeah.
AD for the place.
This address should contain the word Mumbai.
Okay, that will do. And how to find this gray literature? Because like there are many. Suppose we are doing a research on something which is very new. Suppose
Right.
this is being done during these times during COVID, and
Right.
there are a lot of articles which are done but not published yet. So how to find these?
Right. So there are many such resources. So I'll answer it in brief. Now, PubMed and almost any medical website gives you some links to research that is being done. So that is one great thing about COVID. But for anything else, if you need, then there are different gray literature things. So like one is the clinicaltrials.gov. And if for India, you have a CTRI, Clinical Trials Registry of India. So there are many clinical trial websites which you search and you get to know where all clinical trials are happening. Now, if it's not a trial but something else, there are different what are called preprint servers. You'll have to write down this term and keep it. Search for preprint servers, and there will be preprint servers in physics, chemistry, etc. So you might have to look for medical preprint servers. So what is a preprint? Authors are sharing their information ahead of time. The advantage for them is many people worry that if I put it up ahead, will somebody else steal my thing? But you can put down your date there and prove that you thought of it earlier. So that is again somewhere where you know what is getting done. And the good way to go ahead is to ask to collaborate with people and go ahead that way. There are many other ways. I've just mentioned one of it. So there are lots of gray literature areas. Maybe someday I will try and start adding gray literature resources.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, I mentioned on just a minute on qmed.ngo. I would encourage you to look at one menu item called resources. So there we have resources useful for searching, resources useful for writing, and one tab is for extra reading. So this resources useful for searching, we have mentioned clinical trial registries, but gradually we'll add more and more gray literature resources as well that way.
Ma'am, suppose there is a word like we want to find what is the healthcare being provided to non-COVID patients. Okay? And if we enter this word as like there is no mesh term as non-COVID, and if we
Correct.
enter this as a title, then it comes like COVID ही आता है पूरा non-COVID जैसा
Right.
कुछ नहीं आता.
So you'll have to put non-COVID TIAB. So you're asking for results where non-COVID comes. Now I know that's not the best method of doing it, and these are some of the very tough ones. And this is something that requires a lot more methodology, which I'll have to do on a one-to-one basis.
Okay. So can we do it this way also? We can mention the thing healthcare, not COVID, and we can try to mention the year in which it is being published. So then we can.
So you'll have to try different methods like this. That's right. You'll have to try different methods like this.
Okay, that can be done. And when while citing some article, do we have to just cite it word to word as the author of the title has mentioned? Can we cite its interpretation how we have interpreted it?
So it's like this. First thing, remember, you're citing to give them credit. The word to word and the thing is about not committing any plagiarism. When do you copy word to word? When it's a definition or it is a quotation. So and so said in the year this, something like that. If that author has mentioned something which you want to quote, you will copy paste it, put it in quotation marks, and then your citation will be the number or that author year, whatever thing that you're doing. And then at the end in your reference list, you'll give the full author title, whatever journal name, etc. The word to word is about the wordings that you're using. You can copy and paste only quotations or definitions. Anything else, you write it in your own words and you again say as so and so said, or in this paper, this description was there, and then put in the citation, which could be a number or author year.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. I had only this many doubts. Does someone else has any doubts? Please, you may please ask them. No? I guess everyone has understood it quite well.
I hope so. And since I have a bunch of email IDs, if there are more, I'd be happy to have them. I'll be happy to write to all of you to tell you about the courses and about the fundraiser that I'm planning. And I invite ideas from all of you. The reason I'm doing this is that even though institutions take it or individuals take it, many mistakenly believe this is not required to be learned at the UG level. Whereas I firmly believe that the earlier you learn it, the better it is. So that's why I want to do this fundraiser and see how best. And not just a fundraiser. See, some of you might be very happy to pay right away and learn it. Great. I want to incentivize as well. So that incentivization, I'll be starting in a few days. I'll let you know. And I want to write to all of you about it. So I have about 40 odd email IDs, I think. And more of you, if you can provide it, that will be great. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for letting us know so many things about searching and letting our work, reducing our so much of work for searching and
I want to
referencing.
see all of you grow into great researchers and great doctors who have evidence-based practice in mind. That's important.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.
So tomorrow is Sunday, so no workshop. We'll have our next workshop on biostatistics directly on Monday. So that's all for today. Bye.